You know, I didn't expect to cover this much wrestling on the podcast. I mean, holy crap, the first two episodes might as well just be wrestling podcasts, basically. Welcome back to Geeky Steve D Show. I'm Geeky Steve D, aka Steven Diggs Jr., or maybe that's the other way around. Hopefully, you did not hear what I just heard outside. I don't know. It sounded like a four-wheeler farting. I don't know. I live in a city. It doesn't make any sense. But anyways, there's also about 15 different things of construction going on around me. So hopefully you guys don't hear that as well. But you know what? Here it goes. So anyways, apparently WrestleMania may not have been the biggest wrestling headline all weekend. Yeah, that's right. WWE was actually sold to the Endeavor company. I think it's just called Endeavor, actually. So Endeavor is the company that owns UFC. They are going to split UFC off from Endeavor and make a new company with WWE and UFC combined. And I believe it's worth $21 million or $21 billion. Excuse me. Wow, million would be nothing. Who cares about that? $21 billion with a B. B for the big ones. So that's good. That's huge. I mean, that's huge. And I think what we saw at WrestleMania may have been the start of that, actually, because the end of night 2 of WrestleMania was disappointing, to say the least. So I'm sure everyone has seen now. Cody Rhodes did not defeat Roman Reigns for the WWE World Universal Championship. I think is what they call the unified belts. Kind of a long-winded name. Should just be WWE World Title, but that's for another day. Yeah, so he did not beat him. Roman won with a lot of shenanigans, of course. Solo Sikoa and the Usos, Heyman, pretty much everyone that you would have expected to help did help Roman win, but it doesn't defeat the fact that Roman won. What kind of story are we getting now? I thought this was the end of a story. I thought this was, you had Cody's return, I guess a year and a half ago or whatever now. And then I guess a year ago, now, because he was at WrestleMania. Then he, got injured in this triumphant Hell in a Cell that he still wrestled at. Then he came back at Royal Rumble, won the Royal Rumble. You had the Sami Zayn stuff happen at the same time where he split off from the Bloodline. And on night 1, defeated the Usos with the help of Kevin Owens to win the unified tag belts. And what Dave Meltzer has said is the best WWE tag match of all time, maybe? I mean, this is crazy. So you have all these stories that kind of go together for the Bloodline. It's like the Bloodline stories. And then what happens? Cody Rhodes loses. So the Bloodline story continues, which, I mean, I figure it's going to continue to some degree, but you'd have thought this was going to be the epilogue of it. And now it's not. This isn't the epilogue. This is just an ongoing part of the story. I don't know if I agree with that. Let me know what you guys think out there, because I'm pretty sure that this should have been the end of the main Bloodline story. And I think that maybe it should have been coming to an end maybe at the upcoming show in Puerto Rico or Money in the Bank or SummerSlam or somewhere else very soon. That's probably where I think its logical end is. Now, I don't know. We might have it go on through Hulk Hogan's reign, which was 1,474 days. That was his longest reign, which I think was his first reign as the WWF champion. And that would take it to September of 2024 if Roman was going for that. So let's hope it doesn't do that, because that's not what we want. We don't want that. Let's just hope that it ends kind of soon. I think that this has something to do with Vince McMahon now taking over. It's starting to seem that more and more news is coming out that Vince McMahon is running a lot of the creative. It sounds like Triple H is kind of doing the big picture things in some ways, and Vince McMahon is kind of in the trenches. Or maybe it's the other way around. It seems kind of confusing because Vince McMahon did rewrite Raw constantly. I've heard it was constantly even through the show, which was a common old school Vince thing. He's done that forever. And I think it really ruined a lot of the last 15 years of Monday Night Raw and WWE in general. And let's just hope that it doesn't stay that way. Let's hope that Endeavor changes things, but I doubt it. I think that this was all a game to get Vince McMahon back in to where he wanted to be. I think that he wanted to be back in the company. He's under this new role where he's making a ton of money, and I think that he wanted to be back in control. He knew he had to leave. It would have been really bad for the company if he would have stayed. And I think he knew that he needed to leave, so he did. He split. And I think it was like a handshake deal between him and Triple H and Stephanie McMahon and Nick Khan, and just said, look, I'm going to leave. You guys run it. And maybe on purpose, maybe run it a little differently than I did to kind of give us that false hope, to give not just us, but more the shareholders and the general public the false hope. Oh, that's in the past. And now he's back. And he's got this new mustache and dyed hair and dyed eyebrows. I don't know if everyone's talking about it. All of his hair is like uniform. And actually, I think it's on purpose. I actually think that the reason why he did all this is to disassociate himself from the old Vince McMahon. I just think that that's something to do with becoming a different person in his mind. So people see him as this Vince McMahon and he looks different than the previous one. I don't know. That's just a theory. I think it sounds kind of credible in my mind. And he really shouldn't be there. I mean, he's done a lot of bad stuff in his past. And to be honest, the company shouldn't want him. But it's his company. That's the problem. He had 80% of the controlling shares of the company. So even when he was gone, it was his company. And that's hard to shake. It's kind of crazy to think that even though they went public 22 years ago, I think it was 2001, that he really is the company. It was still his company. He had all the controlling shares that anyone would ever want in a public company. It was still his company. He just made a boatload of cash, a boatload. And the company did get bigger in the last 20 years for sure, but not creatively. And they haven't done as well as they should have. The last 20 years, there's been no competition until AEW in 2019. You had TNA, which could have maybe been something, but they fell apart as well too. And I think it's now time that WWE has some reckoning for all the injustices that have happened. But it's not going to happen. Now they're part of a $21 billion company, which is just crazy. This company's going to be around forever. This new company is going to be around forever. They have the biggest wrestling organization. They have the biggest MMA organization. And they're now considering it an entertainment company, which puts them with all the other major entertainment companies. It puts them with Disney. It puts them with Warner Brothers. It puts them with a company called Feld Entertainment, who runs Monster Jam. They run Supercross. I believe they run some other like traveling shows, which is really what Endeavor's new company, because it will be a new company. Endeavor is going to be the parent company, and then there's going to be a separate company that'll be WWE and UFC. And who knows, in the future, they might buy something else. But there's a company, like I said, called Feld Entertainment that's very similar to them, who has been kind of in this game for a while, this like live touring entertainment brand. And you can also look at, I think it's called Liberty Media, who owns Formula One, and they do kind of the same thing as well. And they're positioning themselves to be a large entertainment company. That could be for the good. It could be for the bad. It could treat it just as a way to make a ton of money, because if you look at WrestleMania, there were ads everywhere. During matches, to spotlight matches, you had a blood feud between the son, Dominic Mysterio, and the father, Rey Mysterio, and it was sponsored by Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and they had a mascot, a literal mascot there. Just ridiculous. At the ring, there was a mascot. There's logos and stuff everywhere. One of the other matches was sponsored by Intuit TurboTax. One of the other matches, the Hell in a Cell, was sponsored by this new Russell Crowe horror movie called The Pope's Exorcist. and apparently people in the crowd booed when they had Russell Crowe stuff up. I think the fans were getting tired of it. I don't mind there being advertising in general in anything WB, but it's got to make sense. And I think it should be like a hockey thing. It should be on the boards, just kind of there, and they can have some ads that kind of tie to it, but not like cutting into things. Not, I don't mind when they do the instant replays and it shows in the corner a sponsor, Snickers or the 2K game right now. Things like that is fine, but when it's like the match is sponsored by it and there's an intro from this person, you had a Mountain Dew Pitch Black match a few months ago, back during the Thunderdome shows, they had a zombie match for Army of the Dead. It's too commercial. And imagine if every baseball game had to stop to have commercials right in the middle of a pitch, or they had to call this today, this was the Crest toothpaste fastball. Like everything can't be branded. It has to make sense. Besides, also, if you have a good entertainment brand, your brand will make money because people want to see your entertainment. They don't necessarily always need to have everything sponsored, because if you did well, if you had good writing, if you had good stories over the last 20 years, then maybe, just maybe people would actually buy your merchandise, buy the games, pay for the Peacock, which would get more money in the long run, which makes them the most money. Peacock and their TV deal are the two biggest things that they have going for them. I don't think they're going to make anywhere near the billions of dollars off of the Cinnamon Toast Crunch ads during a match that they are from Peacock, and they are from their own network, and also those major deals. So I think that they need to understand that, and that requires good writing. That requires good stories, good matches. It can't feel, it's scripted, but it can't feel scripted. It has to feel real. Wrestling is the best when it feels real. And obviously it's real life turned to 11, as I've heard it described. That's why a lot of people say that the Attitude Era was great. You had kind of these guys that they were caricatures in a good way of everyday life. Stone Cold was your everyday man who hated his boss. The Rock was the goody two-shoes kind of guy, the guy, the silver spoon in his mouth feel a little bit. He thought he was better than everyone. Mick Foley was literally every guy on the street. That was a big deal. And then you had your goth kid. You had The Undertaker, and you had Kane. You had the guys who were just there to kind of cause chaos and have fun. That was DX, right? You had, and then you had other guys. You had, of course, one of my favorites, the badass himself, Steve Blackman. And, you had the fighters. You had Blackman. You had Shamrock, who was a psychopath. You had Dan Severn, the no-nonsense guy who's just in there to win matches, and then you had characters all in between that. And I don't feel like we get that anymore. And then when we do it, they're scripted so hard. Everything's written like a movie script that you don't feel that person is that. They feel like a character. And you can get away with that in a movie, TV show, something on a video, because they can act it. They can really kind of hone in before they get that, not one take. You see one take. You might actually see 5 takes. They just cut it together so it looks like one take. But they have time to practice that. Wrestling is done live in front of people constantly, and you have to engage the crowd. Actually, I wonder if plays should engage the crowd more, for instance, and borrow a playbook from wrestling. Maybe that would be an interesting thing too. And because wrestling's this weird thing of a little of the play atmosphere, sports, and then this new hybrid of just organized chaos in a 4-sided ring. And it's amazing and it's beautiful when it's done right, but it could be done wrong. And one of my prime examples of this is that in WWE, the superstars aren't the main characters of their own show. And, it's kind of, there's really kind of 2 main characters of the show. If you know them, shout them out to me. But there's 2 main characters, and they're not wrestlers. And I'm not talking, they're not people. Let's put it that way. They're not even people. They're something else. I don't want to spoil it because I'm going to do a long video on that at some point, because they're not people. They are something else entirely, and which is an issue, is totally, totally, totally an issue. It's an issue in other sports as well. Major League Baseball is going through this right now as we speak. It's an issue in hockey. Hockey does a really bad job of promoting their athletes. It's a real bad job, I think, in entertainment as well. Sometimes entertainment brands rely on the name of what they own and not necessarily the stories, which everything comes down to stories and characters. Everyone wants to see, a comeback story, or a story of redemption, or story of triumph. Cody Rhodes was the story to do that, and they didn't, and they failed miserably for that. And is that a sign of what we're going to see coming forward? That's what scares me. And I hope that that's not where we're going. And, we're early on in this. Just because they're a new company, they're not a new company yet. WWE is still an official company right now. If you look up their stock market, they're still selling right now. Those deals take a little bit of time to come together because they got to go through the government and get, passed as an actual company to make sure they're not doing anything illegal and all this stuff. And then it'll be an official company, I don't know, by the end of the year, let's say. Look how long the Warner Brothers Discovery one officially took to become an actual company. And that's a disaster right there. And you got to wonder, hopefully nothing like that happens here. And look at all the cost-cutting measures they did. I mean, things are definitely going to change with WWE. Lots of people are probably going to lose their jobs, unfortunately. Maybe not wrestlers, but more on the business side, more in the office. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other things that are going to happen as well. And let's just hope this is for the better. But we don't know. This is going to be a time of uncertainty. I think the rest of this year is going to really show where their head's at. And we'll see if they borrow from other things. We'll see if they borrow from UFC, or if UFC borrows from WWE. We don't know. What's this going to do for the TV deals in the future? What's this going to do for Peacock in the future? Because Nick Khan has already came out and said that he could foresee in the next TV deal, or the next deal with Peacock, that, let's say it would stay on Peacock. Let's just say that's hypothetical. It would stay on a streaming service, but then you have to pay an extra amount to buy the pay-per-view. So UFC does that on ESPN Plus. You pay $5 a month for ESPN Plus. Then you have to pay the $55 or so to make it $60 combined to buy the actual pay-per-view, which is the old price of UFC pay-per-views before all this happened. So let's say WrestleMania, I think, was usually $70, which I don't know how they do it now that it's 2 nights. I hope you don't have to pay individually. That'd be awful. It should be a package deal. But it could be $80, $90 because they could say, oh, you're getting 2 $40 nights, I mean, it'd be crazy. So if they do that, and you pay your $5 a month for Peacock, whatever, then you pay $75 for WrestleMania, or $45, $55 for SummerSlam, maybe $35 or $40 for Money in the Bank, or any of the other, Battleground, or whatever random weird names they come up with next week. And man, that would be hard to go backwards. That would be very hard to go backwards. Could you imagine? That would be like, instead of your new Netflix show coming out, you'd have to pay $30 for the season, of a new season of a TV show. That would be rough. That'd be really hard to go back, and there'd be a lot of outrage. So I don't know, but that doesn't mean that the price of WB doesn't go up as well either, because there's a chance that I think they're getting about $1 billion a year for Peacock. Maybe when those negotiations come up, Peacock might bid $2 billion a year. Peacock, owned by NBC Universal, which is owned by Comcast / Xfinity, and they've already mentioned about maybe buying Warner Brothers Discovery in, I think, it has to be 2 or 3 years, because Warner Brothers Discovery can't be bought because they're a brand new company. The dust has to settle on them before they can buy a new one. But there was rumors of that happening, so there could be a lot of shuffling going on. What does that mean for AEW? Where does this play in? Because we don't even know if that means they're going to stay with Comcast and NBC for part of their deal, and then they have Fox for SmackDown. Maybe they go off Fox now. Where does this change? UFC has a deal with ESPN, so that's Disney. Does WB go to Disney? Does WB start going on ABC? I don't. I imagine that ABC on Friday nights for SmackDown, for instance, probably could be a decent fit. Is that possible that Endeavor as a company decides to make all of their platform, all of their entertainment properties on one streaming service? Because that would make more sense for negotiation. So now you get UFC, you get WWE, you get whatever else. You're going to get all the extra programming. There's going to be a lot. I mean, streaming's been in wild, uh, just wild things going on right now. All the crazy stuff that's been going on just because of people been overpaying for a lot of stuff on streaming in terms of how much a TV show costs to make for streaming and stuff, and now they're finding out the returns aren't quite as good, and now we're all kind of fighting over the same audience where it used to be a growing audience. Now it's mostly churn and burn. You use it for a month, you cancel it, so on and so forth, and back and forth. So you got to think that's WWE's going to play into this, and they have a lot of new content every week. Raw, SmackDown. They still, I think, do main event. They have all the extra shows they could make on for the network. They have all the other stuff they do. They have pay-per-views, which are the biggest money maker. That's not the shows. That's the thing that's going to get people to sign up for a streaming service. Like, they're not going to sign up for Raw and SmackDown because it's probably going to be a replay. It's still going to be on TV for 10 years. But the pay-per-views, that's the thing or premium live events, excuse me. That's the things that would drive for a streaming service, would drive subscriptions. And it's doing well, I believe, for Peacock from what I've heard. I have a feeling that this WrestleMania is going to end up being the highest generating subscriber push for Peacock since WB's came on board. There's been a lot of buzz for this WrestleMania leading into it and now. And I think we're going to find out that this has been a huge, boon for Peacock, which is a struggling streaming service. So where does all this play in? I don't know. There's a lot of high-level chess going on. This is like 3D chess. This is Star Trek TNG chess going on right now. And I'm sure that Nick Khan, Vince McMahon, Triple H, all of those guys are in negotiations, talking, going through everything with all of the companies they work with, and then they probably will start working on a deal in about a year from now for the next cycle of deals. So there's probably some talk with other people as well, and who knows what's going to happen. And this is an interesting time, and really I just want it to come down to, we need good wrestling, we need fun wrestling, we need entertaining characters, entertaining stories. Let's hope we get that. Because wrestling's not been as good as it should have been. 20 years onward, and I feel that wrestling, especially right now, is starting to become stagnant again. And we need change. We need different opinions and different outlooks on things. Maybe people that haven't had the chance to shine both behind and in front of the camera. We need anything we can to kind of make it what it used to be, but also what it can be, and also what it should be. It's not going to be what it was in the past, but it's not going to also be what it should be right now. And there's definitely there's a way to make this unique and different, and that's what we need. And we need it to be just back to something that makes the characters and the stories priority number one. Priority number one should be that. Priority number one shouldn't be to make money. I know they're a business, and I know that's the point. But the problem is, if you don't have a good product, you don't make money. That's with any sort of business. It doesn't matter what it is. If you sell crappy cars, you're not going to sell as many cars as a good one. And then word of mouth helps. And, it can get better and better and better. And I mentioned on last week's episode that video games have been stagnant, I feel. And if you make better games, more people will buy them. It's common economics. It's very simple. It's something that can be fixed, and it should be fixed. It should be fixed immediately. It wouldn't be that hard to fix it. It would take a little long term. It's a long term kind of game though. It's not tomorrow. It's the ratings are going to blow through the roof. But if you build on it, if you had Cody win, if you had Sammy and KO should be going into some really good tag team feuds and blowing up the tag team division. Maybe there's been rumors of FTR jumping ship from AEW to WWE. That would be another stepping stone to make the tag team division better, for instance. And you just keep working over and over and over, and you try things and you see what happens and see what works. We got the great MJF free agency coming up in a year or two, maybe. I have a weird feeling that he signed a lot longer with AEW than he's putting on because it's MJF. It's hard to know what's real and what's not real with him. But that's what makes him entertaining. That's what makes him a character. And that's what we need. But if his contract's coming up, then that what's going to happen in a year with him? And what's going on now is going to affect his decision then too. And is the new Endeavor company going to be interested in him? Or is AEW going to just shell out, the dump truck? Is the dump truck just going to back up to his house and just unload unlimited amounts of money? Maybe with the help of Warner Brothers Discovery, who, yeah, I know that they're shedding money, but when they get that stuff figured out and they have a real plan, they might be like, well, wrestling might be part of our plan, because they can look at WWE and see how much it sold for. They can look and see. I know that Tony Khan runs it, but that doesn't mean that they can't have a large chunk of that pie. And maybe they see what they can do. And I think it's going to be an interesting time. I would like to know what you guys think. Just please let me know. Comment, subscribe, please subscribe. I'm on all the social medias. I'm on Twitter a lot, just at GeekySteveD. Any of those, you'll find me. Facebook, Twitter, that's kind of my big ones. I'm on YouTube all the time, obviously, so please comment, please subscribe, and I will catch you next week. See you later, guys.